Hey guys, welcome to the Cozy Writing channel. So remember last week when I had this deadline plan where I was going to do Act 1 by the 10th and Act 2 by the 20th and so forth and so on? Yeah, today's the 10th and I'm not done with Act 1. It's kind of sad. So here's what happened. I'm working away on Act 1 and everything's going great. And I'm working in the Maggie timeline, which is the then timeline, takes place back in the 90s. And I'm working on it and I'm realizing I don't really know how this plays out. I mean, I have points in my head. I know where these specific points, I want them to happen, but I don't know everything how it plays out. So I temporarily put away the outlining and I broke out my Post-it notes and I wrote down all the action points that I knew I wanted to happen at some point. And before we get into that, just a point that, remember that thing I was calling a demon that I said was just a placeholder and I wasn't really sure what it was going to be? I've narrowed down what that's going to be. We're going to be calling it a seed because it actually acts like a seed. It's this round, glowy thing, and it will turn into a tree or something like that. It wants to grow, and it's everything condensed into like ball format. So the things that needed to happen was A, Maggie and Henry needed to make the seed. Now, if you followed along last week, you'll know that Maggie and Henry are in the 90s timeline, and Henry has this great idea to give him and Maggie magic. And he found this spell, and he thinks it's going to work. So, of course, it's not going to work. I mean, for case of plot. So, in this plot line, the spell they have is not what they think they have. It's actually, instead of imbuing the person with magic, they're making this seed of magic that then gets put into a person or a thing or something like that. They don't know this, but they perform the spell somehow miraculously. They perform it, it works, they make the seed. So there's action point 1. Action point 2 is they have to get to the school after hours because I decided I want this at a different location. I randomly decided the high school. So I need to get them to the high school after hours. Not a big deal. I decided that Maggie was in the drama club and there was a play going on, so that gave them reason to return to the high school at like 7 o'clock at night. So they're bringing the seed with them to the high school because the ride shows up kind of interrupting like the end of this spell, so they stuff the seed in Henry's backpack and off they go. Action point number, what are we on, 3? Action point number 3 is Henry is on the football field and he's, I don't know, maybe he's getting bullied, he's running, he trips, his backpack falls, the seed spills out, it goes into the earth from there. Action point, Jesus, I feel like I just said it, but I've already lost the number. I'm just going to call it 4. Action point 4 is the seed is building and it's kind of like become like this gross pimple in the middle of the football field, and it's going to burst open and there's going to be like this viney tree thing inside. At that point, Simone needs to enter the story fully, that she needs to basically join Maggie and Henry to do something about this magical plant that's growing very big and very fast. Action point number next, because I've already lost the number that I'm talking about, is something needs to happen, and this is one of the parts where I'm blanking. The next thing I know that needs to happen is they need to like basically retrieve the seed. They need to yank the seed out of this tree viney thing, and that kind of like puts the end to the supernatural happening in the middle of the football field. But there's something needs to happen in between those 2 chapters. And I can kind of put the pieces together. It's going to be like teenagers fighting against this thing to save reality, something like that. But 1 chapter there. And now this is all happening in Act 2. Act 3 is where a lot of my chapter holes are, because the next thing I know I want to happen is at the whole end of the book, where they're going to kind of bury this seed in a box so it doesn't become its tree thingy again in Maggie's basement. She has a really old house. It's like an earthen floor basement. So they're going to bury the seed in that. But I don't really know what happens between those points. The best I can come up with at this point is that when they're making the seed, Maggie grabs a hold of it, and remember when I said it wants to grow and become something? Well, it starts like sinking into her hand, and she gets really afraid and she tears it off, but a little piece of it will be caught in her palm. So I feel like the seed and Maggie are connected, and that's going to adversely affect her somehow, some way for those 2 or 3 chapters before kind of all hell breaks loose, and then the group decides in order to hide it and keep it safe, they need to bury it. So yeah, there's that whole mess. I don't know what's going to happen. And normally I would like to say that, you know what, it will come together as I'm writing it and everything will be great. But I know how this happened last time. Like the last time I wrote a book and I relied on that, I'm sure it will come together. There were chapters like 26, 27, 28, something like that in the former book, and those were hell to write. I redid them over and over again, just kind of forming and chiseling away until I got where I wanted to go, and I don't really want to go through that same experience again in this novel. So I don't know. Did I jump the gun? Do other authors do this? Does everyone have the plot like in their heads before they start outlining things? I feel like this is the point where I should be making that happen, where I should be figuring things out. But I don't know, maybe other people have different ways of doing this. Do you guys do this the same way? Do you do it differently? What works for you? So anyways, let's move over to the bigger problem child, which is the Kate timeline. I thought that I had this planned out. I had this idea that Kate is going to be kind of summoned by the witch council, kind of like your sued situation where one of the witches comes up, hands her a letter, and walks away, basically forming some kind of contractual bond where Kate needs to show up to the witch council and defend herself about why Sam died, because the witch council is holding Kate responsible for another person's death because that person died because of Kate doing magic, doing some magical something. In any case, Kate's on the line here for that. But Kate doesn't feel like she did anything wrong. She didn't kill Sam. It's just circumstances worked that way. So she feels like she's innocent. Plus, she's still grappling with the guilt of, she knows deep down that she was probably the cause of Sam's death. It was really scary for her in the first book, looking back on what she did and what she became and how out of control she got. She doesn't like that. It scared the hell out of her. So I had this whole scene planned out where Kate and Jack and Tad end up at the courthouse. They're looking for Clint, hoping that maybe Clint can help them out with the situation, at least maybe give them an inside track on how these things normally work. And Kate's kind of confronted by a rogue member of the witch council. Like, she's a little old lady. She was on the council before, but there's a whole story there. But Kate ends up in the council chamber kind of defending herself against this one little old lady, and things just kind of go haywire. Things go wrong, and I expected this to be longer than it turned out to be. When I actually wrote it out in that, abbreviated first draft, outline, whatever you want to call it, it's only like a chapter and a quarter. It's one whole chapter where Kate's in this chamber talking to this lady, being accused of things. And then the chapter cuts, and then the next chapter opens, and like she's escaping basically from that chamber. And I thought it was going to take longer, but as I was trying to make it longer, I'm like, no, this is wrong. This is making it drawn out and boring. So a chapter and a quarter it is. But the problem is now I need to figure out what a better inciting, no, that was the inciting. I need to figure out what a better plot point is going to be, and then move into the pinch points in Act 2. I just don't know what those are yet. I feel like I never know what this stuff is, and I'm just making it up as I go along, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm just doing it. So yeah, how's your Tuesday going? Mine's going great so far.